Well, friends, believe it or not, despite my delinquency in posting these videos, I still am trying to do additional thoughts and album reviews. This is going to be an album review for Black Antique by Pink Siifu. And for those of you who are not aware, my real-time schedule, my real-life schedule has been kind of thrown to the wind with stuff at the house and work and whatever. I don't want to get into that. You guys are kind of aware, but that's why it's been taking longer. One thing with these reviews specifically is I really want to have time to sit and listen to the album top to bottom uninterrupted. And this album being an hour, 18 minutes, it makes it harder. It makes it a lot harder. But more so, I'm trying to come into these reviews from an angle that's more of a music appreciation angle, not so much a review, a critique, a critic type of thing. I don't really want to exist in that lane. More of just trying to understand the album, share more insight of the album after spending more time, sharing what feels like works, what maybe doesn't work, that kind of thing. And with Black Antique, it's been very challenging. Very challenging. This album is very unique in a good way. But the way it's constructed and the way it functions and operates, it does make it a challenge to just kind of jump in and go for the ride because there is a time commitment with the runtime. I don't really have a problem with the runtime. It being essentially 80 minutes, most albums I get a little concerned. I go, it's starting to drag on. This one, to me, it doesn't drag on, but it's almost misleading because it starts from a very kind of grungy, grindy, grimy, aggressive sound. Alive and Direct especially, great, but they're great. You open up in this just kind of angry, dark, vibrating frustration of sound and experience. But as you keep going, there's a couple notes, there's a couple things I wrote down. One, I wrote down emotion and absence. This album, as I spent more time with it, it feels like this ride of feeling and apathy, this double helix of just constantly spiraling through these emotions and then being numb to it and then feeling it and then numb to it. And the way it's done is so well done, it's hard to describe. Because on one hand, there is absolutely emotion, feelings, frustration, all that shit being expressed, but then there's this subset sound layer, this just kind of echoey emptiness that exists that takes all the sharp edges off sometimes. No, I shouldn't say all the sharp edges off, but it's just this weighted balance between the two. It's really kind of fascinating. As you get further into the album, Screw for Life, R.P. Jalen, Who You With Ho, you kind of go from this grindy, aggressive sound into this just darker sound. And then as you keep going, you get into like Girls Fell Out of the Sky, PSA, Face Card. To me, that's really where you start getting into this feeling of just emptiness, absence. Another thing I wrote down for this track for this album is, it's kind of like going through the wall of a hurricane and then getting to that core, the eye. That's another idea of what this album feels like to sit down and listen to. Again, I've listened to this quite a bit. I've been listening to it for well over a month now, off and on, when I get a shot to listen to it top to bottom. Really trying to just pinpoint how to explain the sound, the experience that I've gone through with this. And it's almost gotten to a point where I feel like I'm probably just way, way, way over analyzing it. Like in the search of trying to describe what this album is, it almost brings me back to the thing of, it is what it is. There's nothing to describe. It is its own unique ride. But at the same time, that's what makes it so special to me. This isn't like any album I've heard in terms of like the hip hop era. Like you've got loud experimental hip hop, you've got chilled out fucking trap music, you've got all that kind of stuff. This is just a really interesting blend of the two. But in that, it makes it kind of hard to recommend to people. Because if you're into the chilled out shit, you're not going to like the front end. The loud, aggressive distortion. If you like the loud experimental, as you get about halfway into it, you're going to go, what the fuck? Where'd all of this go? So that, in a sense, it's almost, I don't want to call it like a self-defeating album, but you really have to have appreciation for multiple genres of sound to enjoy this whole ride. Favorite tracks, I've already kind of said favorite tracks. Alive and Direct is great. Screw for Life, R.I.P. Jalen is great. PSA is great. Face Card I really like. Last One Alive I really like. And then the best part too is Last One Alive is track 17. There's 2 more after that. It feels like the album kind of ends on Last One Alive, and then track 18 is just like an emoji symbol. Track 19 is called Blackwater, and it is the weirdest fucking song I've ever heard. And, well, not the weird, I shouldn't say the weirdest, but it is very odd. And I love how odd it is. Just kind of like this plucking guitar in this water dripping sound, like in a cave, and mama's dying, and this do. It's just a trip. It's an absolute trip. I don't even know if I said anything worth listening to, honestly. It really has been a fascinating album to continually put on and sit with, get comfortable with. You know, I think a lot of albums, obviously, the more you listen to it, the more you become familiar and the easier it is to hear. But sometimes, you know, there's a break point where you go, your brain really does figure out if you're into it or not. And with this one, I'm into it. The longer I've listened to it, the more interested I become, the more familiar I get with the entirety of the ride, the more the ride makes sense, the more it does feel like this hurricane as you slowly pass through all this loud aggression into kind of like a calmer, maybe darker abyss. This double helix of feeling so much, but also just in a way, because you feel so much all the time, it's almost like you feel nothing, like your emotions are a blown out speaker. And yeah, you're trying to crank the noise, but just nothing comes out anymore. I think that feels pretty real this day and age when there's just so much shit going on, and it feels like you got to pay attention to everything and care about everything, but you just can't. And it's like this emotional burnout, this attention burnout. And also, some of the stuff that he touches on in the album, there's almost like a kind of like a cyclical nature to it, where you're just going through it over and over again, which is another version of emotional burnout. One thing I do think holds this album back is, even though I like how it's mixed and how it sounds, the production and everything like that, I feel like the vocals not being that clear generally. There's times when you can hear what he's saying, but overall, I feel like it's a struggle to hear everything that he's saying. I think that holds the album back a little bit. I think if the vocals were a little bit more... It's weird because I don't want to say clear. Like, I don't want to change the sound of the album, but I do want to hear what's being said easier. Because I think if the lyrics come through, if that content comes through, then it only adds to the experience of what the album is doing. So there you go. There's Black Antique by Pink Siifu. Excellent album, in my opinion, honestly. But it's one of those albums where I feel like it's very niche. It's going to exist in its own space. And I feel like because of that, even though it's doing what it does very well, I feel like a lot of people are going to have a hard time approaching it. Because if you want club bangers, not really. If you want chilled out, yeah, there's some, but you're not listening to the whole album. If you want loud experimental, front end's great, but you're going to get bored with the back end. And so it's one of those things where it definitely feels like the artist made it for himself to express whatever it was that needed to be expressed. And that has been executed well, but in that lane, because it's so unique and specific to, I suppose, to that specific line, that expression, that whole ride, the idea, whatever the idea is of this album, I feel like it's harder for other people to approach it. I've enjoyed listening to it. I definitely recommend it. If you're into odd, experimental, if you're in a space where you have time to just put something on and really let it run, really just soak with the experience and with the sound, I definitely recommend this one. Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. I took my best shot. There's my review for Black Antique. All right, y'all. Take care. We'll see you soon.